Do I make you nervous? Do I make you nervous, Megan?
You always make me nervous. How you grow my business? What does that mean?
I think you hit it. You hit it. You just, bam, you nailed it, right? Growth entails everything, right? So you can't really just say this one thing. And I think the challenge with a lot of times with I've realized with even coaches, consultants, let's call them gurus, right? And nothing wrong with gurus, right? Because in my opinion, gurus wants to teach many, right? At scale, is they'll teach based on their lens, that what they've learned, what they've experienced, which is good, right? Because that's what some people want. But really, I'm a firm believer that people have unique instincts, right? So things that they're great at.
I look at business as going to war.
And that's what I believe people should focus on, because if you do stuff that you're all like mediocre on and good on, then you hit like burnout. You know, even though you make good money, but you hear people say like, well, I made great money, but I was really unhappy. You know, I was overworked, I was stressed, and when that happens, you know, you're gonna stop doing what you wanna do, and you know, the business is gonna fall apart, or you're gonna make some bad choices, and that's what I mean by growth, is to focus on those things, and you know, just let other people do the other stuff, you know, so.
Gotcha.
In my mind, I break it down into always two components, right? Two components is one is you have to know first where you start, okay? In terms of where you start as in where the business is, okay, that's number one, right? And the secondly is where you're currently at, as in your skill sets, right? Access to resources, experience, that kind of stuff. So I'll take like the business, for example, okay? So in my opinion, business breaks down into 4 phases. And those 4 phases are, first one is startup phase, then you have your growth phase, then you have your third one is the aggressive growth phase, and then the fourth one, as I like to call it, is the spin-off phase of your business. Yeah, and do you want me to break down each one? Okay, so the startup phase of a business does not mean how long you've been in business. Because when I sometimes explain this to people, they get kind of like ticked off. They were like, well, I've been in business for 10 years, you know, or 20 years. I'm not a startup, you know, but I define that you're out of the startup phase when you actually physically have reserves in the bank account from profits. So if you don't have that, then I believe that you're still in the startup phase, because you're going through that boom and famine cycle where you're constantly selling a bunch of stuff for products or services, and then suddenly, you know, you make good money, but then, you know, for whatever thing, an emergency happens, or you can't even fund a new project to grow your business, right? So you got to be able to first have money in the reserves, all right? 6 months worth of reserves typically. You know, if you have 3 months, depending on the business, you're okay, but you have to have reserves. Now, the big question I guess asked afterwards, right, when I say that, is people either believe in it, says, okay, cool, or the other people, depending on their instincts, going back to instincts I said, is they'll say, well, what's in that reserves, right? So I tell people you got to have your own salary in there as well, right? So it's not a real business until you can pay yourself. Yeah, correct. So now I'm not saying like pay yourself a freaking, you know, $250,000 salary. No, like what your bare minimum, what you need, so that way it covers like your monthly nut, as I like to call it. Kind of sounds sexual, right? Like the PG. Well, you agreed upon it, so you could have just went that way. So. So when you have that, right, your overhead, your monthly, your marketing, whatever it is, and you have that, then you're out of your startup phase. And typically in the startup phase, for other people to understand, is you just have to make money, right? It's just you're trying to figure out how to make money, and you got to hustle and make money. And then once you have that and you have your reserves, then you go into the growth phase of your business. And the growth phase of your business this is where you have to get a go-to move, right? Something that you can do every single week, every single month, and it's predictable. Because if it's not predictable, then you don't really have a business, right? You just have let's just call it organized hustle. Okay, so again, hustle is like startup, and then you go into growth phase. This is where you're trying to get organized hustle. Okay, so and this requires some capital investment. So that's why you need to have those reserves, right? Because if you don't have that and you try to jump that and you're trying to leverage like other people's money, which is cool, but I don't, I think if you borrow other people's money, I think you get really sloppy. In my background being an investor, I know that for a fact, The other one is like credit cards. You can absolutely do that. There's time and place to leverage, debt, but if you can figure out how to make money without debt, without investors, without credit and that kind of stuff, I think you're going to be a much more superior entrepreneur. So once you have that go-to move where you do X, you do Y, then you go into the aggressive growth phase. Okay, now Still, to those two phases, you still got to have reserves. Okay, you absolutely got to have reserves, because when you're in the growth phase of your business, it requires a crap load of capital. All right, and this is where you may want to go leverage debt. Okay, but you may not want to, but you still requires a lot of, it's really capital intensive. And I know that because I've been, myself running different companies, a brick and mortar, running investment companies, right? When you hit that certain phase where literally your business is like the hockey stick, right? You hear people say, hey, hockey stick, it went up, like geometric growth. And it requires money, not in terms of like even upgrading the stuff that you use, right? So if you're using some certain CRM, you can get away with using the bare bottom stuff, right? But when you start getting into the higher stuff, you need more analytics. Other thing is you need to bring more people on board, right? That's going to require money and investment. You just don't want to hire someone for the sake of hiring them because they're dirt cheap, right? You're looking for talent. Other things is you have to invest. Right, so you have a go-to move, and let's just say one of the go-to move is media buys, and in media buys it's like PPC, buying advertisement, and one thing is working, right? You're gonna need some money, because if you know that, hey, an advertisement, you put $1 in and it's giving you $1.50, $2 back all day long, how much money would you want to spend? Much as you can. So it's going to require that. Now, the fourth phase. Because at that time, when you have your policies and procedures in place, then you go into the fourth phase, right, which is I call the spin-off phase. And this is where you leverage your strengths and competencies laterally. That's what I tell people. And what I mean by that is, by that time, you should have a unique understanding of the core competency for your company. Right? Regardless if you're a solopreneur or you have a huge team, you have a unique trait, a unique culture. You have a competitive advantage in the marketplace, and the reason why you became successful. Okay, and that's typically way different than what the outside world thinks.